Hello, I'm Farhan, your host for the day. Hope you're all doing good. Welcome to the second live by Skillmine. We will be covering an interesting topic, full stack development, in today's session. This session would be of great use for those who are looking to pursue a career in full stack development, for those of you who are already working as full stack developers, and also for others who would like to know what makes full stack development popular these days. Before we begin our discussion for the day, let me give a brief introduction about Skillmine and the team behind it. Skillmine Technology Consulting is a new generation IT software company with a wider presence in India, the Middle East, and the Americas. The company excels in the areas of cloud transformation, cybersecurity, robotic process automation, data science, data center consolidation, and analytics transformation. As a customer-focused organization, SaaS operating model. To complement this, Skillmine also supports IT organizations with skill augmentation services to meet the challenges of a complex IT environment. Now, let me introduce the speaker for the day, Mr. Srinivaslu Saya. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Srinivaslu Saya, sir, is an expert with over 30 years of IT experience, which includes an experience of around 10 years exclusively in the areas of full stack development and Python programming. He has a strong set of skills in data structures and algorithms. Today's agenda would be to discuss some prominent questions concerning full stack development and then answer a few popular questions from the audience. If you have any doubts or need more clarification on any of the questions, please feel free to raise them in the chat window. Now, let's begin without further delay. Thank you all for taking time to join us today. Please sit back and listen. Sir, my first question to you is what is full stack development?
Yeah, the full stack development is the term used for developing a full-fledged web-based application. All web applications are developed based on the client-server architecture. Any web application development consists of usually two parts. One part is developed for the front end, which is also called client side, and the second part is developed for the back end, which is also called the server side development.
Okay. Now, moving on to the second question. What is front end and back end development? Like, what's the difference between these two?
Yeah, the front end portion of the web application is generally used by an end user, so which is generally you use through a web browser. So the development that you do for the front end portion of the web application is called front end web development. So the web browser generally is the client of the web application. Hence, the development of the web application code, so that needs to be executed inside a browser, web browser, is referred to as front end web development, which is also known as client side development. The front end portion interacts with a web server that runs on a computer. It could be a physical one or virtual one located remotely on the network. The network could be within a local area network or it could be on the internet. Hence, the development of a web application code that is running on the backend server is referred to as the backend web development.
Okay. Now, moving on to the third question. What are the benefits of full stack development?
As a developer, learning full stack web development brings higher value to the company that you are going to work for, as you have the knowledge of both front end web development and as well as back end web development skills. Also, if you are a full stack developer, your chances of getting a job is two times higher because you can do the work of the front end and also you can do work of back end. In addition to that, you get paid almost anywhere between 20% to 100% higher if you are a full stack developer compared to a front end only developer or a back end only developer. So compared to the front end or back end only developers, you'll be getting anywhere between 20% higher, or even it could be double the salary of the front end only or back end only developer.
Okay, sir. Now, full stack development is very popular among job seekers these days, right? So, could
Yes.
you give us some insights on the skills that's required to be a full stack developer?
As a full stack developer, you need to have the working knowledge of the front end and as well as the back end web technologies mentioned, um, that will be mentioned, uh, yeah, before. Additionally, you need to have good understanding of REST APIs and JSON. The working knowledge of one or more relational databases, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and one or more NoSQL databases like MongoDB, Neo4j, and Redis. You also need to be familiar with debugging tools, Git tool, which is used for source version control, Postman tool, used for simulating REST APIs, and these REST APIs are usually called by the front end portion of the code. So you need to be familiar with these skills in order to become a full stack developer.
Okay. Now, I would like to know more about this. So, what are the job prospects in full stack development?
Almost all companies, be it a multinational company or a startup company, needs a full stack developer for providing the user interface for a software application on the web. So here are the few prospects for a full stack developer. The top internet based companies, be it Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Flipkart, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, all these companies need full stack developers. Let us take, for example, a networking company like Cisco or Juniper Network. So they need to develop a web based interface to their network router or a switch. So both Juniper and Cisco, even though they're networking company, they need a full stack developer for developing this web-based application that interface with the network router and switch. Let's move on to a finance domain. A bank wants to provide online banking service for their customers. The bank needs a full stack developer because the application that the your customer will be using, the bank customer will be using, needs to be developed by a full stack developer, which includes front end portion of the web application and as well as the back end portion.
Okay, sir. What about the salary? Like, what is the average salary for an entry level full stack developer role?
The average salary of an entry level full stack developer in general will be anywhere between 5 lakhs to 6 lakhs per annum. In India, the salary of average full stack developer can start, minimum like 4 lakhs per annum in cash, and it can go as high as 15 lakhs per annum if you're an expert developer. If you're an exceptionally good and lucky developer and to get placed abroad in a, FANG companies. FANG stands for the Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google like companies, and including all the perks, including joining bonus, relocation expenses, high education expenses, and stock options. It can go as high as 1.4 crores per annum. So, but that is one of the only exceptional developers will be getting. But considering that you are average developer, you can expect anywhere between 5 to 8 lakhs. So that is the average.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair enough average salary. Also, at this point, I would like to remind the audience once again that you can raise your questions regarding full stack development here. All your queries regarding the topic would be answered by our expert for the day, Mr. Srinivas Lusaya. Now, sir, let's move on to the next question. What are the most popular technology stacks that's used in full stack development?
The basic technologies used in front-end web development are HTML5, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language version 5, CSS3, uh, it's cascading style sheets level 3, and JavaScript. If the front end of a web application has to be developed from scratch using these basic technologies, HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript, the cost and the time of development will be anywhere between 2 to 5 times more than the yeah the usual cost. Hence, the developers they use the front-end web frameworks for developing web applications, and a modern way of developing a web application nowadays is called single-page application. In short, SPAs. The popular SPA
Okay.
frameworks are React from Facebook, Angular from Google, and Vue.js created by an open source developer by name Ivan Vue. The backend of a web application is developed in any of these languages, namely PHP, JavaScript, Java, Python, C Sharp, Ruby, Active Server Pages, Java Server Pages. The list is very long. And the backend of a web application needs to be developed again from the scratch using any of these technologies. Again, the cost and time of web development will be anywhere between 2 to 3 times more than the usual. Hence, the developers use the backend frameworks for developing a web application to fasten their development time. There are one or more web application frameworks in each of these languages used for backend development. Let us take, for example, PHP language. The PHP based frameworks that are used for developing web applications are Laravel, CodeIgniter, Symfony, Cake PHP, Falcon, and few more. If you're talking using a JavaScript on the backend side, the web frameworks that are available are Express.js, Nest.js running on Node.js platform. Both Nest.js and Express.js, both of them run on Node.js. There are a few other frameworks which are based in Java, but they're not that popular compared to Express.js and Nest.js. If you are using a Python as a language for doing your backend development, then the web frameworks that are available are Django, Flask, and FastAPI, and few more. If you're using Java for backend development, like most of the enterprise applications are developed in Java, so the frameworks that are available are Spring, which is one of the most popular and in-demand skill, the Spring framework. And there are other frameworks like Grail, Play, Structs, Hibernate, JSF. JSF stands for Java Server Frameworks, and few more. Java Server Faces. Yeah, next one.
Okay. Next question is regarding load time. So, what are some ways we can reduce the load time of a web application?
The load time of a web application depends on multiple factors. One way of reducing the load time is to minimize the code bundle that has to be downloaded by the web browser from the backend web server at the beginning of the web application. The bundle usually includes the code written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The complete bundle of these HTML, CSS, and JavaScript has to be as minimum as possible. By writing the optimal code in all these three languages, preferably handwritten by an expert developer, so the size of this bundle that needs to be downloaded from the backend web server can be significantly reduced. Also, the loading of web application can be faster by reducing the number of HTTP requests. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So the front end will be making HTTP requests to the backend for fetching the code, or for fetching the images, and anything that has to be coming from the backend side. So for everything, you need to make HTTP request. So the number of images that you are going to download, the amount of JSON data you are going that is needed by the front end, that needs to be serviced and sent by the backend. All these things have to be kept minimum. Also, the load time can be speeded up by downloading just the right sized images required for the devices. If you are working on a big screen device, then you need a big size images. If you are viewing the web page on a small mobile device, then there's no point in downloading a big size image, because ultimately for displaying that big sized image on the mobile device, you need to again you fit to the mobile screen. So that also puts additional load on your mobile device. Hence, you need to decide what is the device on which the web application is being used, and then and download just the size that is required, that fits well onto the device which being used by the user. That way you will be saving the bandwidth, especially if you are on a mobile data plan, and you will not be basically using just anything more than required for displaying that web application on the device.
Okay. Okay, sir. Could you also tell us about the design patterns and inversion of control?
The design patterns are used to represent the best practices used by expert developers for software development. A design pattern is identified by an easy to remember name, and it solves a frequently occurring design problem. Writing software code following a design pattern makes the code easier to understand and easier to maintain by the other developers. The code, if it is written as per a design pattern, so that will be more elegant and robust compared to the code written in an ad hoc way. Few of the design patterns are factory pattern, singleton pattern, decorator, proxy, and there are many more. Let us now focus on the inversion of control. It is not truly a design pattern, but it's a programming principle. In inversion of control, in short IOC, the flow of control is reversed, that is inverted, compared to the traditional control flow. Usually, a program execution flows from the custom written code by the developers to a framework code. That is what the normal flow is. In the inversion of control, the opposite happens. That is, the custom written program receives the execution control from the framework. So again, I'm going to repeat. Usually, flow moves from custom written code to framework code. That is the normal flow. But in inversion of control, the flow moves from framework code to the custom written code. In other words,
Yep.
the framework calls into the custom or the task specific code written by the programmers. In other words, the IOC, that is inversion of control, decouples the execution of a task from its implementation internals. This may sound a little bit technical, but yeah. Uh, so if you are a computer science graduate, then you will be able to appreciate uh, these concepts better.
Okay. Sir, what about the future of full stack development? Does it look bright to you?
Yes, the future of full stack web development is bright, until the next big revolution in software development happens. Let's take a few examples. Until year 2005, the software development was primarily was happening as a native application. Native application is what you need to download and install it on your machine and execute it on your machine. Generally, these native applications were written for platforms like Windows platform, be it Windows 7 or Windows 10 or any Windows platform, or it could be Linux platform. Linux could be it could be CentOS. It doesn't matter what is the flavor of Linux OS you're using, or it could be for Macintosh platform, Mac OS. The web development was a revolution 17 years ago. So until then, the developments was happening as a native application, but developing applications for the web was a revolution almost 17 years ago. That is just after, around 2005, because that was a new way of developing software for the web. The application development uh, that happens for the cloud also has a full stack development component. So in my view, full stack development skills will be in demand for next 20 to 30 years. So the future is bright. So whatever the investment which you are going to make in learning full stack development, at least it will be useful for you for next 20 years, the minimum.
Okay. Sir, one common question that I came across when I interacted with a few aspirants looking to
Hmm.
start a career in full stack development is this.
Hmm.
Is it possible to get a job as a full stack developer by learning, say, only JavaScript? Is it possible that way?
That's not possible because JavaScript is only see if you learn the JavaScript as a language, but yeah, it may be a bit tough. But in addition to the language, you need to know the programming for the backend or the front end.
Yeah.
If you know only the JavaScript, yes, not yeah, that alone may not be sufficient. You need to be familiar with the REST API calls, and as well as you should be familiar with the databases, how to interface your backend application with the backend database. So if you know these things, then your chances of getting hired as a backend developer will be higher. But just JavaScript alone
So,
would not be
what about
sufficient.
the okay? So, what about the educational qualifications that's required?
Education qualifications wise, um, if you are a BTech graduate, that will be very helpful because most of the IT companies
Okay.
they look for an engineering graduate. Most of them prefer if
Hmm.
you're a computer science graduate or the from the information science or information technology. So these are the
Yeah.
departments from which most of the IT companies will be interested in hiring. But if you are from other engineering disciplines as well, be it triple E, that is electrical and electronics, or if you are from ECE, electronics and communications, uh, those engineering disciplines will be preferred as a second option. But there are some other companies, they will be hiring from other engineering disciplines as well, be it mechanical, chemical, and any other uh, other engineering disciplines. But if you are from other engineering disciplines, then the quality of work we will be doing in the IT companies will be somewhat of lesser grade compared to the ones if you are from ECE or CSE or IT background.
All right. Are there any tips that you would like to give people who are looking to start a career in full stack development?
Yeah, if you are have got the skills to learn uh, by yourself, then go out and do the search on Google for these keywords what I mentioned in this webinar, and you'll get the list of websites. You can go and mm, read the blogs and articles which you get as a results in the Google searches. So that is one way. And another way, if you are a visual learner, then go to YouTube, and there you can search for these same keywords, and you'll get set of the video links, and you can follow and watch them. But you have to be a bit cautious about these video links, because some of these videos, they tend to be either they could be very advanced, which you may not be able to understand, some might be very basics, and some may be a little chatty. They will be giving less technical content or more of general information. That is also not a productive use of your time. So you should pick and choose what suits you well, and start your learning journey from those videos as well. And last but not the
Okay.
least, just by reading the articles and by watching the videos, you'll not become a full stack developer. You need to practice what you learn, and you need to explore, and you need to get your hands dirty, and ultimately you should develop a sample applications which is working, and that will give you an experience, and that experience you can demonstrate to the your prospective interviewer, and so that the chance of you getting hired will be much higher, and you can crack the interview.
Okay, sir. We have before we wind up, we have to take a question from the audience. So one of them wants to know what the difference between Ajax, Node, and Query is. Node.js and Query is.
Query, yes. uh, Let me just check. Query, yes. I'm hearing it for the first time. uh,
Ajax, Node.js, and Query. These three.
oh, okay. Query, not query, yes. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ajax basically stands for the AJX. Ajax stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So this is the one of the technology which was pioneered by Microsoft in the early days of web. So basically, just to put it in a simple words, so you'll be writing asynchronous code in JavaScript, and using that asynchronous code, you'll be making a request to the remote web server. When you make a request, and you'll be getting some response from the remote web server. So the response what you get from the remote web server will be in the form of XML. XML stands for extensible markup language. So since you are making a call using asynchronous JavaScript, and you are getting a response in XML format, so the AJX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So that is what is the technology which was adapted and popularized by Microsoft. But now
Okay.
uh, the response what you get from the remote web server will not be in XML anymore, because XML is difficult to read and difficult to edit. So in place of XML, the response what you will be getting from the remote web server will be in the form of JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which is machine readable, and also it is human readable. It's easy to edit. Now most of the web applications nowadays, they send the data to the front end in the form of JSON.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, and yeah, that is what is
I
Ajax.
yeah.
The next one is your Node.js. Node.js is a platform. Okay. See, JavaScript was the language developed for the web browser. So you cannot write the code before Node.js came. You cannot write the code in JavaScript and execute it from the command line, from the terminal. But when Node.js, what it did was, it took the JavaScript out of their web browser, and they made it to run from the command line at the terminal. So, so that is what is basically in simple the Node.js is. Now you can write the code, the backend code in JavaScript, and run it on Node.js platform, and which runs as a the backend web application. So Node.js, you can say it is a basically a platform, execution platform for backend web applications. So The query is basically uh, whenever you have to store some data permanently, so that you store it in a the hard disk, or it could be SSD, solid state drive. When you save the data in the disk, and you generally store it in a database. You give that the data to the database, and database stores it in its own format, so that whenever a user asks for the data, so the database will be able to fetch the data what you are looking for in a quick and efficient manner and return to you. So the query, the question, what you are going to ask the database is what is called query. So that is called database query.
Okay. Okay, so that's all we have got for today. Now that brings us to the end of the session. It was a very informative session indeed. I thoroughly had a great time knowing and learning more about full stack development. I hope that we were able to clear most of the doubts that you had with respect to full stack development. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you.
Also, thank you to our wonderful audience for tuning in. In case you have more questions on full stack development, don't worry. You can raise your questions here. We would be posting the answers to the remaining questions on our website, skillmine.com. Do check out our website to find the answers to your queries. That's all from our end. We'll catch you live with another insightful session in the coming days. Thank you all once again, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.